Hello everyone, this is Isra Youssef, and this video is a revision for the final exam for grade 8. The final exam material that is included in your final exam, the comprehension section is going to be paragraphs from the passage which is the word badge of courage, from pages 220 to 227, which is from unit 9. The grammar that is included in your final exam is all the grammar you have took before, which is the comparing with adjectives, adverbs and negatives, which is from your grammar booklets, plus the passive and active from unit 6, and you have the pages written below. The vocabulary that is included in your final exam is going to be from the two passages, which is controlling diseases outbreaks and the word badge of courage. The words that are in these two passages are included in your final exam. Now here I put for you like a main idea, points, headlines for the word badge of courage, the important things from the word badge of courage. Stephen Crane is the one who wrote the word badge of courage. You should know who wrote the word badge of courage. Henry, who's written in the novel, who's described in the novel as the youth, is the protagonist of the novel, the main character in the novel. As the novel starts, Henry is lying in his bunk. When the novel starts, Henry is lying in his bunk, and I told you that bunk, which means like two beds above each other, connected together. So this is what you call bunk. So the novel starts when he is lying in his bunk, and he's thinking, confused, and he has like a panic and afraid about fighting his first battle. He got like emotional thoughts come across his mind, Henry's mind. Henry is thinking what would happen if he runs from the battle. So he's trying to not run, but he is going to be scared. So he's in the middle of this thing. Henry was trying to prove to himself not to run from the battle. So this is actually the process of the novel, when Henry is thinking that he should run and not run, and he's trying to convince himself that he should not run and so on, because it's not like a man. It's not a man act to run from the battle. So he is in between these to run from the battle and not to run because he should behave like a man. Henry Fleming, he is the novel protagonist, a young soldier fighting for the Union Army during the American Civil War. So this is actually the novel. It happens during the American Civil War. Initially, Henry stands untested in the battle and questions his own courage. As the novel progresses, he encounters harder truth about the experience of war, confronting the universe's indifference to his existence and the insignificance of his own life. So this is actually what the novel is about, that he's trying to convince himself and trying to be like a tough soldier and not run from the battle. The themes that you have in this passage, which is courage, manhood, and self-preservation. You should know these themes. The themes that is in the word badge of courage, it talks about courage, manhood, and self-preservation. The vocabulary that is included in your final exam, as I told you, the words that are in the controlling diseases outbreaks passage, plus the words that are in the word badge of courage. And the worksheet has been sent to you recently. So this worksheet, the vocabulary worksheet, it has like the most important words that are included in your final exam. So you should take a look on it and understand it very well. Now the grammar, as I told you, that all the grammar that you have took is included in your final exam. Comparing with adjectives. Comparison with ER and EST. Now, the adjectives with one syllable, they take er or est. When do I put er? I put er if I'm comparing between two things, two people, two places, and so on. So if I'm comparing between two, I would add er to the adjective. And if I'm comparing between more than two, I would put est at the end of the adjective, which is superlative. So this is what we mean by comparative, comparing between two people, two things, two places. Superlative is actually to compare between more than two things, people, places, and so on. And you have some examples. Clean, cleaner, cleanest. Now, the adjectives with two syllables and the following endings. Now, I have adjectives with two syllables and they have a certain endings. For example, adjectives with two syllables ending in y. If you have an adjective that ends in y, which is preceded by a consonant, and I mean by consonant that all the letters except the vowels. Okay? So, if you have an adjective that ends with y, preceded by a consonant, you should replace the y into an I, and you would put er if you are comparing between two, est if you are comparing between more than two. Okay? So this is actually the idea. If you have an adjective which ends with a y, preceded by a consonant, you would replace the y into an I, and you would add er if you are using the comparative. You would add est if you are comparing if you are comparing between more than two. If you are using the superlative. And you have some examples: easy, easier, and easiest. Now the adjectives with two syllables ending in er. For example, you have the adjective which is clever. Clever is actually, I would add er or est, and I would not change anything. So it would be cleverer and cleverest. So I would not change anything. The adjectives with two syllables ending in la. I have some adjectives which is with two syllables and which end with la. I would not add another e. So, for example, simple. Here, if I'm comparing between two, if I'm using the comparative, I would say simpler without adding another e. Okay? So, I would add only r. If I'm using the superlative, comparing between more than two, for example, simple, it will become simplest. Simplest, I would add only st without adding e, because it already ends with an e. Adjectives with two syllables ending in ow. For example, narrow, I would add er if I'm using comparative, so it would be narrower, and est if I'm using the superlative, narrowest. Now here you have some examples. The spelling of the adjectives using the endings which is er and est. Now you have the word which is large, it ends with e, and as I said, if you have an adjective which ends with e, you would add the r, ust without adding another e. Okay? If you have an adjective, for example, big, it ends with a consonant preceded by a vowel, and you know that the vowels are o, a, I, e, u. So, if you have a consonant preceded by a vowel, we are going to double the consonant, and then we would add er if I'm using comparative, and est if I'm using the superlative. You have here deity. Deity, as I said before, if you have an adjective which ends with a y, preceded by a consonant, you would replace the y into an I and add er or est. Now here we have an exception, which is shy. Shy, we don't hear. Shy, it ends with a y, preceded by a consonant. But here we don't replace the y into an I, so it will be shyer with the y, shyest with the y also. Okay? So we might have some exceptions, but it is not included in your exam, so don't worry. But you should know these, you should have the knowledge of these adjectives. Now the comparison with more and most. All the adjectives with more than one syllable except some adjectives with 2 syllables, like all that are more than. There's like 2 syllables is actually we can add er, and some 2 syllables we would put more or most. So you should like be familiar with them. There's no certain rule, but you should like be familiar with them. For example, difficult, I would add the word more before the adjective if I'm using the comparative, which is I'm comparing between 2. So it would be more difficult. And I would put the word most before the adjective if I'm comparing between more than 2 people, if I'm using the superlative. So it would be the most difficult. We have here some irregular adjectives. You should memorize them. Like, for example, good. Good in comparative, it will become better. And in superlative, it will become the best. Bad, in the comparative, it will become worse. And in the superlative, it would be the worst. So you should memorize these irregular adjectives. Now here you have some examples. Some exercise. Sue is than Sammy. I'm comparing between 2, Sue and Sammy. So, and I have the adjective tall. Tall is actually 1 syllable. Okay. Does it end with a Y? No. Does it end with a E? No. Does it end with what? So there's no certain endings that I should replace or change its spelling. So I'm comparing between 2. 1 syllable. I would add er, so it would become taller. English is than German. I'm comparing between 2, English and German. And I have the adjective which is easy. Easy is actually 2 syllables. So, comparing between 2, and it ends with a Y preceded by a consonant. I would replace the Y into an I, and I would add er. So, easier. The answer would be B, easier. You are the person I know. I'm comparing between more than 2. So, I'm using the superlative. And I have the adjective lazy. Lazy is actually 2 syllables. It ends with a Y preceded by consonant. So I would replace the Y into an I, and I would add est because I'm using the superlative, comparing between more than 2 people or things or places. Snowboarding is than skiing. I have snowboarding and skiing. Here I'm going to use the comparative. I have the adjective which is exciting. Exciting is actually more than 2 syllables. So I'm going to add the words more or most. Here I'm using the comparative. So I would put more before the adjective and it become more exciting. The answer would be C. Now, here you have the active and passive voice. Here you have some exercises. Read each question carefully and choose the correct answer. Which sentence is written in the passive? You're going to have like sentences, and you should remember the active voice when the subject of a sentence performs the verb's action. You have the subject who is performing the verb's action. Okay, is performing the action, and the passive voice when the subject is acted on by the verb. So the subject is acted on the verb. So this is how you're going to know which sentence is passive and which one is active. Active voice, you'd have the subject who performs the action. But in the passive, the subject is acted upon the verb. Okay? Is acted on by the verb. Okay? Here you have some examples. Which sentence? So it would be D, the dinner is being made by him, because the preceded sentences are in the active voice. Each subject is performing the verb of each sentence. Which sentence is written in the active? It would be Charlie is writing a letter, because the other sentences are written in the passive. Okay, here your subject, you have the car is being cleaned by Sally. The subject, which is the car, the verb cleaning is acted on the car. So here the subject, the verb is acted upon the subject here, so it is a passive. The doer of the action in research will be presented by Einstein at the conference. Is the doer of the action here, who will do the research or who will present the research? It is Einstein. Okay? Now here you have to remember that an adverb is a word that generally describes a verb. Adverbs describe verbs by telling how, when, or where an action happens. Adverb can also describe another adverb or an adjective. Okay, so it can describe a verb, adjective, or another adverb. Many adverbs end in ly. Some adverbs that tell you how, you have some examples, and you have some adverbs that tell you when, you have some examples, and you have some examples, some adverbs which tells you where, and you have some examples below. Here you have some exercises on the adverbs. Now here you're going to choose the correct answer. What is the adverb in Aunt Sonia always wanted to be a reporter? It is always. What is the adverb in the news director plans the assignments carefully? So carefully is actually here the adverb. What does the adverb recently in Aunt Sonia visited Paris recently tells you? When did Aunt Sonia visit Paris? So recently. What does the adverb quickly, and thanks to the news broadcast, we quickly learn what is happening tells you? It tells me how. How we learn what is happening quickly. Okay? Now here you have the negatives. The negatives, not is an adverb. Not is an adverb. Here we're going to talk about the negatives. Negatives, not, you should know that not is an adverb. Not is an adverb. We cannot put double negatives in one sentence. I can't put double negatives in one sentence. And here in this table, you should know what are the negative words and what are the positive words. You have no, none, nothing. They are negative. Never, no one, nobody, nowhere. Actually, anywhere, any word with no is actually negative. Positive words, anything, ever, anyone, anybody, anywhere. You should know that what are the negative words and what are the positive words. Plus, any word that includes the word not is actually a negative. For example, could not, it is negative. Were not, it is negative. Is not negative. Am not negative. So any word that has or that contains or for not is actually a negative. The revision has ended. I really hope that it was useful. Please study well, stay safe. This is your teacher, Isra Yusuf. Bye bye.